Well, hello, church family. I'm here at the church this morning, and I've been praying for you guys. I've been praying for your joy and your strength in the Lord. I've been praying that even in the midst of these really uncertain days, that because of your relationship with Christ, that you would have joy in your life because of Jesus and because of the joy that you have in salvation that you have in Christ. If there's anything that you need or anything specifically we can be praying for, please don't hesitate to call or to email or text. We would love to be able to help you in some way, shape, or form during these really unusual and rather difficult days in which we find ourselves. In our times together, we've been going through Philippians because it is sometimes subtitled the Epistle of Joy. I'm not sure if that's the best title, but certainly the concept of joy is really firmly embedded in this little letter that Paul wrote to the Philippians. And last time we looked at verse 21 of chapter 1 particularly, where Paul makes a very striking statement where he says that for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And we looked at the fact that oftentimes Christians don't necessarily live up to that ideal. Instead, sometimes even born-again, Bible-believing Christians who would say that they have a confidence in the Lord and a faith in the Lord still live in less than Christian ways when it comes to both death and life. That with death there's a fear, there is an anxiety, there is a fighting it tooth and nail, trying to avoid it at all costs sort of mentality. And that's why Paul's words here are so striking when he says that to die is gain. Because Paul understood that to be absent from the body was to be present with the Lord. And because Jesus was the focus of his heart and his life, he looked with great joy to be able to be in the presence of the Lord. And then that last piece of also to live is Christ, that is something I think that Paul develops within now multiple places in the book of Philippians. What does it mean to live as Christ? What does that look like? And then in verse 27, he gives us an example of what that looks like. Notice what he says. He says, "Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. So whether I come and see you," in other words, if he's released from prison and he comes to them and visits them, "whether I come and see you or am absent," in other words, if his trial doesn't work out and he awaits his execution or he has to remain in prison a while longer, whether he's with them or whether he's absent from them, "I may hear of you that you're standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel, and not frightened in anything by your opponents." You know, in these verses, in verse 27, another possible translation of that, if you have an English Standard Version, it puts it in a footnote, as a matter of fact. It says, another way is, "Only behave as citizens worthy of the gospel of Christ." Behave as citizens worthy of the gospel of Christ. And see, what he's saying here is that as Christians, we often live, or we have to live somewhere. We either live in Marcel or Talmoon or Sumi or Big Fork or Effie or Grand Rapids or Deer River or anywhere else that you might find yourself. That's a place where you physically reside. But he's saying there's a way in which you should live so that that is not your primary sense of residency. That's not the primary place in which you identify with. As a matter of fact, in chapter 3, verse 20, the Apostle Paul says that your citizenship, if you're a Christian, your citizenship is in heaven. And so what he's saying here is that we should live in a manner worthy of having a citizenship that is not here, but is in heaven. If anybody knew this concept of living in a place that's not really your home, it would probably have been the Philippians. See, the Philippians in the city of Philippi at some point was kind of reestablished, refounded by Caesar Augustus. And it was a city that would be, northern Greece. It was a region called Macedonia. And it was far away from the city of Rome. And yet Caesar Augustus wanted to make Philippi kind of a miniature Rome away from Rome, so to speak. And so he made sure that all of the citizens within Philippi had Roman Empire citizenship and status. And he even sent many of the former Roman military members and had them retire there, veterans who retired there. So the feel of the city of Rome was a very strongly Roman feel. There would have been a lot of a lot of patriotism to the Roman Empire and to the city of Rome. It would have felt like Rome. As I said, it was kind of a miniature Rome away from Rome. And I think maybe a little bit we feel that even here in Marseille. Because in Marseille we have this reality that many of our people that move up into this area or even attend our church at some portion of the year are part-timers in Marseille. You know, they live here in the best months of the summer months here in Minnesota. And then when the first sign of all the leaves being gone and maybe a snowflake or two flies in the air, they leave. They say to us that, well, now we have to go home. And we love having you here, and we love having those folks with us as much time as we can get with them. We wish they could brave the winter and actually stay with us all year long, but we understand that this is not their home, that they have a home wherever else they live. Their primary residence is somewhere else. And so their primary focus and their primary efforts and their primary energies have to reside where their primary residence is. If the day comes in which they have to move out and sell one of their homes, they're going to sell their home in Marseille to move back to their primary residence. We get that. We understand that. But of course, you know that while they love being here and there's things they enjoy, their primary place, their primary focus has to be back where their primary residence is. And so what Paul is kind of saying is, he's saying, you know, you're a Christian and you live in all these places like Deer River, Grand Rapids, Sumi, Talmoon, Effie, you name it. But your heart, he said, your primary residence, your primary citizenship has to be in heaven as a Christian. That it can't be here. You should always know that even though your name might be on the rolls in somewhere here on earth, that your name is written on the rolls of heaven. And your heart should always be longing to go there, to be back there, to be in the presence of God, where righteousness dwells and where all things are right. As Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz put it, there is no place like home. You know, I think if there's anything that a pandemic does for us, it reminds us that this world has a lot of groaning and a lot of problems. And it reminds us that there is indeed no place like home. So I hope that even though we're never to escape this world, we're to be faithful with our lives, all of our lives, thinking of our life here as a stewardship from God that He gives us to use for His glory, for His honor, for His purposes while here on earth. Indeed, we should all be like it says in Romans 8, all of creation groans. We have those moments where we just groan. We groan. This is one of those seasons in which we groan rather loudly. And as it goes on to say in Romans 8 that Paul didn't consider the present sufferings worthy of comparison with the glory that is to be revealed in the future. That's where our heart is. That's where our home is. That's where our future is. And even now, Paul says, that's where your citizenship is. So keep your hearts focused on home. Is that where your heart's focused? I encourage you to focus it today on that. Well, that's all I have for you guys today, and God bless you. Keep safe, and keep your focus in on Jesus, and we will see you next time.